Stella! Hey, Stella! A Streetcar Named Desire is today's review. Of course, the classic film from 1951 based on the classic Tennessee Williams play. It was nominated for Best Picture. Didn't win Best Picture, but it actually won quite a few for its acting. In fact, it's one of only two films, the other being Network, to win three Academy Awards for acting. So it won for Best Actress Vivien Leigh, playing Blanche Dubois. It won for Kim Hunter, Best Supporting Actress, and it won for Carl Malden, Best Supporting Actor. Did not win, surprisingly enough, for Marlon Brando, playing Stanley. Stanley Kowalski, the brutish Polak. Sorry, not Polak. Pole. He didn't win, but that's very interesting because, I mean, this movie, what I'll say, well, like, okay, so I've watched the movie quite a few times, and like a lot of other people, I did study the play in high school. In fact, I still have my beat up copy from grade 12 English that I forgot to return. Mr. Zagaya, if you're watching this video, I'm very sorry. But, you know, sometimes when you overanalyze things and study it, it can take the fun out of it. I don't think it quite did for this. I got a lot of enjoyment out of it. But one thing that, like, you know, you can talk about the themes, blah, 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 all that stuff. But one thing that I was focusing on when I was watching it the other day, to get it fresh in my mind for doing this review, was the acting, specifically. And I think, you know, we really have a lot to owe to Marlon Brando for his acting style. And actors like Marlon Brando that really brought a different style of acting. Because you know how you always watch, like, a movie from, you know, the 30s, 40s, going into the 50s, where they did have this certain type of inflection, where it was very actory, and you're just kind of like, well, is that how people talked back in those days? Well, no, it was just the acting. So Brando and others like him under the same method of style, you know, the Stanislavski method, I think they called it, more natural kind of approach to acting, and you can see that in his performance as Stanley. So with this, like, almost like revolution of acting, I'm surprised he didn't win, but he would later win for On the Waterfront, also directed by Elia Kazan, who directed this film, also East of Eden, a whole bunch of other great films. One of the best directors of his time, even though he's possibly a pinko, but it's neither here nor there. With Brando and with Malden and with Hunter, we see this clash, not just of the characters as it is in the text itself, but of this, like, whole attitude. Like, you see Blanche Dubois, you see Vivien Leigh in her performance, and it's just this completely over the top, you know, very actory type of performance. But that, like, fits so well with the character because she is like this completely out of touch kind of person who's losing touch with reality with every scene, basically. So I thought that was brilliant in kind of combining those two acting approaches. So I mean, you can look at, you know, the themes itself of the text itself, which, you know, it's a brilliant play, Pulitzer Prize winning play, excellent. But if you want to, like, take on its own themes that just kind of naturally occurred, I would say it's almost like sort of like a torch passing in a way of kind of old Hollywood to new Hollywood, where like with Blanche kind of having her fantasies and magic, as she puts it, extinguished for harsh reality. I think it's kind of like passing away. Oh, Hollywood magic. Let's show you more realistic kind of shit. Let's get real here. So I think that was kind of how it felt watching this movie, if that makes any sense. But Brando's acting is great. I think he's brilliant in the role. He really is. You know, he's like chewing on something. It's a very naturalistic performance, which you kind of take for granted that just was such a new thing at the time, and watching it, you know, in comparison to Lee is very fascinating. Movie itself, I mean, it's a great adaptation of the text. I mean, there's differences here and there, but I think, you know, it hits the key points home. It really does effectively show us Blanche's descent into madness, and we learn a little bit more about the character as we go along. Basically, this movie is just, it's a wacky comedy about what happens when your in-laws visit. But we learn a little bit more as it goes along, and her, history gets more and more shady, and we pity her more and more. And she just deteriorates more and more. And Stanley, he's just like picking at her like, a child tearing the wings off a fly or something. He's torturing her throughout this whole movie, and it just gets worse and worse. Of course, ultimately it amounts to the infamous rape scene, which I'm sure was a huge problem with, MPAA, Morals Board, or whatever like that. So it's heavily implied here, as it is in the play. But I would say the biggest difference here that I think hurts the movie in comparison to the play is the very ending, where it's heavily implied in the ending of the movie, at least, that Blanche is going to leave Stanley. So she's like, "Oh, I'm never coming back, never again." Well, the play, she's with him, and she can't resist his animal magnetism, basically. So I think the very ending just kind of screws it up a little bit. But at the same time, at the very ending, we hear once again, that famous screaming of "Stella! Hey, Stella!" So I think they kind of maybe this is Kazan's very clever way of kind of suggesting to us, well, if you recall in that other scene, he's yelling "Stella, Stella, Stella." She comes back to him at the very end of this movie. She's saying, "Oh, I'm never going to come back to him," but we hear him yelling "Stella, Stella, Stella" again. So she's probably going to come back to him. So maybe that's his way of cheating it. But the thing is, I can criticize the movie for being that, but apparently, at least from what I've read, they would have not allowed the movie to be made if they didn't do that. If they didn't, put that kind of moral stance on Stella. So I think he outright explicitly did it, but kind of implicitly suggested that, yes, the ending is going to be the same as the play. So, whatever. I love the movie. It's a classic. Some of the most incredible acting in cinema of all time, really. I have the DVD here. It's like a 4-pack with it's one of those Turner Classic Movies sets with Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and of course, A Streetcar Named Desire. Great brand of performance. I think in later years he kind of did in interviews that he hated the character. He thought, since Stanley became such a sex symbol in movies that everyone was missing the point. So he kind of secretly detested that, and whatever. But I would say, if Stella can kind of see him as a sex symbol, then maybe other audiences can, even though he's, of course, infamous brute, and one of the more detestable characters in literature, and indeed in film. So I love the movie. I think it's great. Incredible acting. Vivien Leigh, so incredible in this movie. I mean, she really commits to the role. But I heard that later, like, she had some dementia or something like that, where she thought that she was Blanche Dubois in the later years of her life. But she's so immersed in this character that, I mean, it's unfortunate, that maybe it was just like her huge commitment to the role, but is an iconic, as iconic as, Scarlett O'Hara is, I think. So just an absolute classic. I love it. If you haven't seen it, you got to check it out. So that's my review today of A Streetcar Named Desire. Wonderful film. Excellent performances. One of the key films in terms of acting styles and how it progressed into Hollywood in the later years. So thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think of A Streetcar Named Desire below. Did you read in high school too? What did you study about it? We studied it from a feminist angle, if I recall. So there's that. But comment, rate, subscribe, all the good stuff. Visit Derek237.com. And plenty more. 31 Days of Oscar to come. Stay tuned for that, and until next time, I'll see you later.